Engineering from IIT Bombay, Postgraduate Diploma in Business Administration from Annamalai University, Certificate in Sanskrit from the National Sanskrit Institute, Deemed University, and PhD in Civil Engineering from NIT Calicut. He has authored 10 books in different subjects and scores of technical papers in national and international journals and general articles as well as poem in periodicals. He was the chairman of the Palakkad Center and was the All India Committee member of the Institution of Engineers India, the biggest professional body in India. He is also the office bearer of many professional and voluntary organizations at national, state and regional level and president of Indian Environmental Congress. He is a member of the board of governors of many organizations including 6 engineering colleges and Kerala State Nirmati Kendram. He is a technical advisor and consultant to many organizations. He is the recipient of Netherlands government funded fellowship and Kerala government grant for research. He has delivered more than 2,500 invited lectures or keynote addresses on various subjects. He received the first distinguished faculty award of rupees 1 lakh and medallion from the Confederation of Alumni Associations of Engineering Colleges of Kerala and the Significant Achievement Award from the Rotary Club. Some of his major contributions to Palakkad district include the engineering consultancy provided to the district Panchayat building, Deer Park at Valaya, Telescope Tower at Malampura, check dams construction in Bharatapura, Nelliyambadi Resorts, Sri Krishnapuram Government Engineering College, Palakkad Fort renovation, Kalpati Heritage Village, Sri Chakra Hotel, Ahalya Campus Development, Kairali Hotel, Fort Building, etc., etc., etc. And I welcome Dr. P.R. Mahadevan, sir, for delivering the talk. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sajid. And Dr. Sangeeta, I'm happy to see all of you again because I've been to Vedavyasa some time back.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I don't know how many of those who are present that time are present over here. But before I commence the topic, I'm just mentioning that this is a rather advanced topic in civil engineering, which first year or second year civil students may not be able to join. And I request the coordinator to mute all the videos and audios except that of the principal and Mr. Sajid and yourself. All other videos and audios please mute, because otherwise it will interfere with the presentation. You can just mute all other videos. So the easy way is you can mute all and then unmute these things. That's the best procedure. Is it completed?
Yes, sir. I have muted everyone, sir.
Yes. So you can unmute me and your principal and the ICI office bearer, Mr. Sajid. Others can be totally muted throughout the session.
Sangeeta ma'am, can you hear? Are you able to speak?
Yes, ma'am, I can speak. But as of now, let sir just be unmuted. All others can be muted. That is fine, I think.
Yes,
Only sir's video and sir's
yes.
voice be heard. Yeah.
Yeah, we will also keep our video and audio off.
Audio. I hope now everything is off now. As
Okay,
of now,
okay, that's good. I'm sorry that I have to do this because in the first few webinars which I conducted, the audios and videos were disturbing the program like anything. So we found after a number of programs that it's better to mute everything except the presenter and the coordinator. That is what we do nowadays. Otherwise, so much distraction comes and the screens also get distracted. I'm sorry, because our purpose is to have the webinar on a specific topic. Okay, so at the end of the session, you can have your questions And that also, instead of asking by video, you can just put in the chat box at the end. Because if it is unmuted for everyone, the matter will become so much complicated that I won't be able to hear anything and you won't be able to hear anything. And in any case, you are not hearing me properly, you can send a chat that it's not audible so that the coordinator will check it. So any communication in between, let it be through the chat box. Okay. Now we will go to the first slide. The coordinator will display the slides one by one as I suggest. Let us see the first slide. That is not the first one. Please come to the first one and enlarge the screen. Yes, that is it. You please enlarge the screen. Yes. See the screen. How to reinforce the concrete. Especially civil students at a BTech level. In the third and final year BTech, they study a lot regarding how to reinforce the concrete. Concrete is a pretty old material. It all started with cement. In the mid 19th century, around 1850s, a British mason by name Aspdin, Joseph Aspdin, invented a new material. Since that material was based on the rock from the Portland area in UK, and since that material was used as a cementing material or binding material, he called that material Portland cement. Nowadays, it's called as ordinary Portland cement. But he was not a businessman. He was only a mystery, a head mason. He was not a scientist nor an engineer. With his practical experience, he identified this material just by burning rock and lime and such materials. He added crushed materials and found that this material is very good in strength. But long back, thousands of years back, there is a reference to cement in an Indian book which nobody was knowing till recently. For example, you know that there are 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva. For each Veda, there is what is called an Upaveda. Upaveda means a sub-Veda. There is a sub-Veda called Sthavatya Veda. It's a Upaveda of Rigveda. In Sthavatya Veda, there is a mention that a cementing material can be made by burning selected rocks and limestone and adding some softness to it. That is exactly the procedure which Joseph Aspdin used. So though it was given in Sthavatya Veda, is the first ever written civil engineering textbook. Since it was in Sanskrit and was not available to the Westerners nor even to Indians because of the language difficulty, nobody understood this. But now, even now, you can go to the Sthavatya Veda and learn how cement was used in those periods and how this cement was used for fixing the idols in temples, etc., or big statues, etc. That is mentioned. Forget about that. The material which Aspdin invented didn't become that much popular because he didn't commercialize it. But his son, Aspdin Jr., was a commercial mind. He made this material in bulk and he popularized throughout England. So the Portland cement became a major construction material in the 1860s and 70s. And by the end of the 19th century, just before 1900, people found that the cement is very good in compression. You can make concrete out of it. Earlier also concrete was there, not cement concrete. For example, for centuries in India, we used to have concrete. That was lime concrete or lime surki concrete or mud concrete, but it was concrete. Binding material was different. But by the end of 19th century, cement concrete became a very popular material, and that popular material was spread almost easily because there was no other material to defeat it in its characteristics. Even today, we are yet to find a material which can replace cement concrete and cement products. We don't have a good material like that. Of course, I'll come to some of the materials which we do have later, but as of now, we don't have a very good material to replace cement totally. Now coming to the next slide. You see that on the top, there is a beam given. 2 parallel lines are there. There is a beam on top. And at bottom, there are two parallel lines, which indicates the reinforcement pattern. It's a cross section of a beam. This is the first stage of designing reinforcement concrete. Reinforcement in concrete was necessitated because concrete is very good in strength, but very bad in tensile strength. In compressive strength, it has got very high ranges. Say, for example, if you refer IS 456 Indian standard, you can see that 10 to 50 Newton per millimeter square strength you can have for reinforced cement concrete. But if you go for the tensile strength of concrete, it's only 5 to 15% of that the compressive strength. That means on the tensile side, the concrete will crack immediately. So its use as a flexural material. A flexural material is something which will have tension or compression, as the case it may alter. So for using on the tension side, concrete is ineffective, was identified by the engineers in the very beginning. So they thought of making the concrete effective on the tension side also. And the first ever thought came to it is that it can be reinforced. Then what to do for reinforcing? The first ever trial was reinforced with aluminum or steel. At that time, aluminum was very costly, so it couldn't be done. So steel was the only option. And steel is nothing but iron with impurity. Iron with selected impurity is called steel. For example, we say a steel is mild steel if its impurity is around 0.2% of carbon and some minor other impurities. Whereas we have got high yield strength bars, TMT bars, where the impurity is more. So impurity is basically deciding the strength of the steel, because the iron content is the same. Almost 99 point some percentage will be iron content. Very less steel content will be, very less impurity content will be there. That impurity is mostly carbon, nickel, chrome. All these impurities may be there based on the requirement of, for example, there is a special steel called chrome steel, which have got industrial applications where the carbon content is less in the impurity, the chrome content is more in the impurity. So these are all common with different types of steels. Now they found that steel is the best reinforcement they can use for strengthening the concrete. And one more thing is, today there are even better reinforcement. For example, today Kevlar is a material, carbon fiber is another material, and even thin steel wires, high strength steel wires. And the most effective among them is glass fibers. Glass fibers can be developed up to almost 3 times the strength of steel. Just imagine glass, power-drawn glass in thin layers, in thin wires can be even 3 times stronger as the steel. You know that in the bulletproof coat, the bulletproof overcoat which the VVIPs wear, the reinforcement inside is glass. Even a bullet cannot penetrate it. It's not steel reinforcements. Steel can be even broken, but bullet these fibers of fiberglass cannot be even broken. It is such a strong material. So, but from all other physical concerns, we identified that steel is the best material for reinforcing. That is how RCC became synonymous with steel reinforced concrete. RCC stands for reinforced cement concrete, but reinforcement is by and large 99.9% steel from then to now, even now. Of course, the procedure has changed, that's all. Now come to the next slide. You see the next slide. It's a quotation from Le Corbusier. Le Corbusier is one of the most vociferous and most imaginative architects last century has seen. He's a French architect. And he has given a lot of marks in India. Many of the historical buildings in India have been by him. And the best example is the planned city Chandigarh. Chandigarh city was planned by, Chandigarh is the best planned city in India. So many other planned cities are there, but Chandigarh is the role model for them. That was designed by Le Corbusier. So he has told that poetry can be carved out of concrete. Now let us see how this poetry will look like. Next slide will tell you. See the next slide. That slide is some of this poetry. 5 samples are given. The tallest among them is Burj Khalifa Tower. In that diagram, it is written as Burj Dubai Tower because till 2010, before it was commissioned, it was called as Burj Dubai Tower, but then it was sold out, so it is called as Burj Khalifa Tower. That is the tallest with a height of 830 meters. And next comes CN Tower Toronto with a height of 553.3 meters. Next comes Willis Tower Chicago. And remember, Chicago is the city in the world with the maximum number of skyscrapers. Most of the skyscrapers are in Chicago, but Chicago has got one more speciality. Chicago is known as the windy city. See, this is a challenge to the structural designers. The highest windy city is Chicago, and most of the tall buildings are in Chicago. So the designer has to be extremely careful. You would have heard about, when I was a student, the tallest building in the world was Empire State Building. That was also in Chicago. Now coming to the next building, Taipei 101, which is in Taiwan, which is 509 meters tall. Then Petronas Tower, 451.9 meters. Petronas Tower is in Malaysia, and this is a place where some international quality hotels are available. And I have read that Mohanlal, the Malayalam film star, is a frequent visitor to this hotel. It's in Petronas Tower. He has even written an article on his stay on the inside the Petronas Tower. So these are all the poetry which are carved out of concrete. All these buildings are concrete except for some specific steel parts there. Especially the CN Tower Toronto is having a high percentage of steel, and even the Burj Khalifa Tower is having a very high percentage of steel. For example, out of that 830 meter, 240 meters is a steel spire or a steel pillar, which is having an average diameter of 1.2 meters, and 244 meters is that. So what is the actual building height? Actual building height is 830 minus 244, that is only 586 meters. And all this 586 meters you will not be permitted to climb. If you go there to Burj Khalifa Tower, you will be permitted. I have gone there and climbed it, and I think they permitted only up to around 120 floors or so, maybe less than around 400 meters tall. Beyond that, they won't permit us. They permit only trained people to climb the tower, because on top of the tower, if you are standing, that is, if you stand over the top of the Burj Khalifa Tower, the wind can take you 8 feet to and fro. Just imagine, 8 feet, it can take you to and fro within a fraction of a minute. So you will be thrown out. That's why common men, that much amplitude is permitted without breakage or crack of the structure. That's a design. That's a design philosophy. So that's why people are not permitted to go on top of it, except trained people like the spacewalkers. There has to be tower walkers who can, who have learned how to stand over it. Now come to the next slide. This you can see on the left side, that is a steel spire on top of the Burj Khalifa Tower. That is 244 meters tall, and it weighs around 4,000 tons, or simply 4 million kilograms of steel. And it is specially treated steel. It will not have rust. It is stainless steel basically, but structural stainless steel. There are two different types of stainless steel: structural and non-structural. Structural stainless steel is a costly affair, but that steel is that. For example, you know that the oldest iron pillar, which is rustless, is in India. If you go to Delhi, you can see that the iron pillar, which is over 1,000 years old, which is not yet, has got a rusting on it. Non-rusting. That means Indians were the first to invent stainless steel, but Westerners don't accept it. As per them, it was invented in the West. You can read in the textbooks. But we have got a standing example, a standing testimony to a stainless steel pillar, standing still in the country. Okay. Now, the total structure, you see the right side of it, that is the foundation of Burj Khalifa Tower. I just wanted to tell you how the tall buildings to have the foundation and top. That's why I explained this. Actually, this is not the best example to explain RCC that I am coming to. But you see the right side, it is supported on steel piles, round piles. Each pile having 1.5 meter thickness. 1.5 meter means around 5 feet. So the thickness of a steel pile is almost the height of a person in your group. Your group may have many people with 5 feet height. 5 feet, 5'2" are all common heights here. Each pile is having that much diameter, and they're having 50 meters height each pile. And 50 meters height means around the height of around 15, 16 storied building. So tall is each pile. And these piles are anchored in the base concrete, and they support the foundation concrete. You know, there is two parts which is called the bottom part is called the foundation concrete, and the top part is called the basement for it. And you can see at the bottom, it is in foundation concrete. Otherwise, it will be punched onto the earth. And the shape of that foundation you see, it's a peculiar shape. This shape, actually, this was designed by a Pakistani structural engineer who is working in a US design company. They found out this shape by studying the nature in Gulf countries. They found that there is a particular plant in the Gulf countries which is known by the name Hymenocallis. We call it as the wild lily. And this spider lily, not wild lily, spider lily. And this spider lily is having such a shape with 4 leaves. This is having only 3 petals. The actual flower is having 4 petals. They conducted wind tunnel experiment on this, and they optimized it by structural optimization process. Those who have done PG in structural engineering will be knowing the process of structural optimization. And by wind tunnel test, I'm catering to all the category. Those who want some advanced information, you can see that this was designed based on the wind experiment. Why? Because in any tall structure, the design criteria is definitely different. In the BTech level, students will be studying design of structures, design of RCC structures, design of steel structures, and all the structures they design based on the dead weight of the building. Very rarely students at graduate level go for wind load analysis and earthquake analysis, very rarely, because a 2 or 3 story building doesn't have any concern for such dynamic forces. But the situation changes. Say, for example, I happened to design a building. It was 11-storied building. At that time, computer was not available. This was around 25 years back. At that time, computer analysis was not very common. We had to do the analysis by the derivation methods, and we did it, and we found that the effect of the dead load is almost negligible on a 11-storied building. So what about this? Burj Khalifa Tower is having 160 stories in the building itself. There is a 161 story, which is a service story, where the spire is connected. And then 240 meter spire is over that. So this building, the self-weight is of no concern in the design. The design concern is basically wind and earthquake. Those who have studied the structural design know that we simply assume that the wind is active, the earthquake may not be active. And when the earthquake is active, the wind is not active. And we have such a faith in them. Both happens together. I don't know what will happen. All the buildings can collapse, all the tall buildings, because there's a story about the failure of a bridge, Tacoma Narrows Bridge. This bridge was in the west. They designed the bridge properly for wind load and self load. That is enough. Earthquake load is not of much concern because wind load is taken. Wind load is more than earthquake load in that building, because that deck was supported on flexible material, so that was not a problem. But what happened is, at some particular time, the soldiers marched over the bridge. You know, Western soldiers are not like us, not like our soldiers. They march in perfect synchronization. That synchronization made resonance on the bridge deck. And after some time, the bridge deck assumed, that curve shape, the sine curve and cos curve you would have seen. And the bridge formed into the shape of sine curves and cos curves. And it ultimately collapsed. So that is a historical case how resonance can make a bridge collapse without any other load. There was no wind load, no earthquake, only the resonance load. But resonance gave rise to a wave-like formation of the surface. This can happen even now. Luckily, that is why thereafter there is a military rule. When the soldiers are marching, when they come to the bridge, they should stand at ease and then move easily. They should not march. That's a rule in the military right now. So this can all happen unexpected. But now coming back to this Burj Khalifa Tower. I think I have explained all these things just to make you feel that there are such civil engineering wonders. Now, another building more than a kilometer is under construction in Abu Dhabi. Actually, our Maharishi, wanted to have around 1,200 and odd meters tall building at Nagpur. He made even the plans and structural design just started. By that time, Maharishi died and that project couldn't complete. He wanted the tallest building in India and he had the resource also at that time. I don't know what is the case now. Anyway, they dropped that case. Now coming to the next slide. All this what I told is just to inspire you to see that civil engineering can make such wonders. Now we are going to the ground reality. You can just message whether I can continue with the same pattern or I have to change my pattern. Just put a chat to everyone whether I can continue the same pattern or you need a change in my explanatory style. Just let me see what is your response. By that time I'll, okay. Okay, now let us go to the real topic which I wanted to discuss today. Everybody is saying that it's okay, they're listening, they're hearing, they can continue. Whatever I told so far, anybody could understand. But what I'm going to say hereafter, everybody may not be able to understand. Please forgive me because it is hardcore subjects. Only those with basic engineering, civil engineering background can understand. Especially those who have completed a beta course in civil engineering, studying final or pre-final year, or working as a civil engineer or teaching civil engineer can understand it better. Others can just listen, that's all. They may not be able to conceive it totally. This is the cross-section of a T-beam, which everybody knows once they start the design of structures. It's having two parts. The top portion, which is wider, is called the flange, and the bottom portion, which is called the web. I just wanted to introduce the terms. And there will be main bars at bottom and top. Only bottom bars are shown here. Top also it will be there. The bottom bars are normally main bars. And these bottom and top bars will be connected by stirrups. Stirrups are nothing but rectangular shaped ties. In column we call them ties. In beam we call them stirrup or tie. They do connect the bottom reinforcement to the top reinforcement. There are rules for this in the IS 456. How much is the minimum size? How much is the maximum size? How much should be the diameter? All those rules I'm not going to explain now because I'll be going to the practical side more. Because theory you can learn from the textbook. Today I was giving an interview to one radio channel and they were asking me, what is the change you are going to happen in the higher education sector in engineering hereafter after COVID? I said people will be learning more from online materials and very less from offline materials, and textbooks will vanish. Instead, Zoom presentation, Google Meet presentation, YouTube presentation, all these are going to be there, and colleges will have to resort only to demo practicals. Classes, their teachers will record, and these recorded classes will be sent to students. So students can be happy because many students used to tell me they are bored of the classes. So when this system comes, your teachers will record very nice classes. They can also use the classes of well-known professors, and that will be sent to you. You can study at late night or any time you prefer. And only for the practicals, maybe first you will be sent the simulated practicals. You go through it, and after that, you can see the demo in your own college lab, either physically or that too also through some platform. Anyway, these are all things to happen within 1 or 2 years. Don't worry about that. This semester, you'll have to write the exam the way you wrote last time. So not change. Now coming to the next one, this is only to show what are the parts, nothing else. This is what we call the detailing. Detailing means you should have a longitudinal cross-section and a transverse cross-section. The left side you see it's a longitudinal cross-section of a beam. The right side you see it's a transverse cross-section of a beam. So any structural member, if it is completely explained by its longitudinal cross-section and transverse cross-section, we call it as, you have changed that one.
Mahadan sir, you're on mute.
I'll say.
So we can't hear you, sir.
From there, I think. Okay, now it's all right now.
Okay, sir. It's okay.
Yeah.
I think while changing the slide, it would have got muted. Okay, anyway, next slide you please take. Yes, this is a slide I was talking about. Normally, I don't operate the slides because while operating the slide, I cannot concentrate on the speaking. That's why I have asked the coordinator to operate the slide, which is so coordinator can listen that whenever I say next slide, you can come to the next slide. Okay. Now, this slide you just see on the left side is the longitudinal cross section, and on the right side is the transverse cross section. These two cross sections, sometimes we go for an elevation without cross section also. For example, in the case of columns and beams, we may even go for a simple plain elevation just to show how the structure is connected. So these things have to be there whenever you give a design. Whenever you give a design to a contractor, the contractors may not be able to understand the theory well, but they can easily understand these drawings because they are used to using these drawings, and they can definitely understand these drawings. So whenever you give drawings that is meant for its use in the field, not in the room, they use it definitely in the field. And earlier days we used to draw all these things by pencil or by black pen and used to give it. But nowadays, then we used to duplicate or triplicate by taking blueprint or photocopy. But now we have got drafting facilities, softwares are there with drafting facilities. Now we go for software. Most of these drawings are done in AutoCAD software because AutoCAD is the best software for civil engineering drawing. Now software like BIM and all are coming with so many piecewise softwares, but even today, AutoCAD is not replaced as a software for building drawing. That is why most of the corporations or municipalities or even local self-government in Kerala is also insisting on, many of the LSDs are insisting on computerized drawing. So AutoCAD, every civil student should be thorough with AutoCAD now. Otherwise, you should have a draftsman with you. A draftsman with a AutoCAD experience can do the same for it. When you are a senior person, you can do that. But to begin with, you must be thorough with AutoCAD. And I suggest that every college, in addition to what is given in the syllabus, they can have extra course in AutoCAD, whether free or paid, that you can decide. That will be really helpful for the students. So otherwise, you cannot submit a plan to the local government. Say, for example, you want to submit a plan to the municipality or corporation. If you don't know how to draw in AutoCAD, you will be really in difficulty. But what we people do nowadays is we make somebody to draw it, we check it and ask them to upload it. That you can do if you can afford for that. But that's the secondary stage. Now come to the next slide. See this slide. This is how a submission drawing will look like. This is only a small example. For example, when you submit a drawing, I'm not going to explain this drawing because I just wanted to make you see that such drawings we make. We have to make such drawings. Normally, earlier we used to make it in A1 or A2 sized sheets, drawing sheets. Nowadays, you can make it in A1 or A2 or A3 sized. Even some of the corporations do accept even A4 sized drawings. You can give on AutoCAD itself, you can upload on their website. They'll use it. So this is how it will look like. I'm not going to explain this because that takes a lot of time. I'll explain from next slide onwards. This onwards, we'll see. Next slide, you have to change the slide. Okay. See this slide? This is the vertical cross section of a column with footing. A column with footing. That vertical member is the column and that horizontal member is the footing. If you see your normal textbooks, the footing will not be shown like this. But this is the correct method of giving a footing. Because in theory, we assume that the footing and column joint, lower portion is the footing and the upper portion is the column. The joint of the footing and column, we assume as hinge. There are different kinds of support in a structure, the hinged support, the roller support, the fixed support, the semi-rigid support, all these things. But this is a type of support we assume as hinge for the analysis part. Wherever you go for construction, you cannot see this. You will see the bar from the column will be coming down up to the bottom and it will be having a bend up end there. That is what you usually see. But that is not theoretically correct. In the old days, when the Britishers used to construct and supervise the concreting, they insisted on this type of construction, because otherwise that joint will become a rigid joint. Being a rigid joint, it will have indefinite stresses at the joint. So the joints of the footing and column will crack. To avoid that, you should have double bar coming into the column, and then that double bar will go up to some height. By that time, the main bar of the column longitudinal bars will come and join. This is the correct method of giving it. But nowadays, people don't prefer it because there is an excess of steel required. Because these steels are higher diameter, being the column and footing, the bar diameters, say for example, in beam, you may use normally 8 to 16 mm, but in columns, you normally use from 12 to 25 or 12 to 40 mm based on the column. So it is very high area of steel, and the diameter slightly increases. The steel area will definitely increase very high. That is why people avoid it. But remember, if at all you see a crack at the bottom of a column, at the joint of footing, you see that it is because the bars are not given like this. That is why many people, instead of going for this, they're going for haunching the top of the footing. If they haunch it, the crack can be slightly avoided, because haunching makes a thicker concrete there, and the strength of the tensile strength of concrete by thickness may be higher. That is possible. Now come to the next diagram. Hereafter, the drawings will tell you. I don't have to explain much. You see this drawing, it's a cantilever beam. A cantilever, I told that only those who have a fundamental knowledge of RCC can understand this. That is true hereafter. There are two columns on which a cantilever is supported. You see the top style of reinforcement. That is what people normally give, but that is wrong. Structural engineers who study fracture mechanics, I think at BTech level, fracture mechanics is not there. At MTech level, you study fracture mechanics. You can see there will be crack patterns developed in the material when the stress in the material exceeds the permissible stress, the ultimate stress. So that is happening here. You see the top diagram, that point shown as crack. There, the stress concentration will happen and it will crack. And cracking of concrete is never advisable, especially on top, because any crack in the concrete is a point of entry of water and air. And if water and air enters concrete, the reinforcement will rust. And the reinforcement rusting is such a very ridiculous phenomena, because a 6 mm bar can become a 20 mm diameter bar after rusting. And it will bulge out the concrete and the concrete will break. Thereafter, the rusting of steel is a thermochemical reaction. If one end of a steel is rusted anywhere, the entire structure connected will be rusted, because all these steel bars are connected by stirrups and ties. And at least the winding bars will be there between the bars. Even the binding bar which we use there, that is also a conductor. So thermochemical means any conductor in between, it will conduct the rust. And rust, you know that the electrolysis happens in the rusting, and it can travel from one end to the other. So nowhere in the concrete crack is advisable. That is why you have to show the reinforcement as given below. First thing is, you should extend the reinforcement of the left side inward, and in between you have to increase the spacing of, you have to reduce the spacing of the ties. The stirrup spacing has to be reduced such that up to an extent of LD by 2. What is LD? LD is the development length of steel. You would have studied it. It's around 47 times the bar diameter, but we approximate in field, instead of going for 47, we take it as 50D, 50 times the diameter, because easy to calculate. For example, if a bar diameter is 6 mm, 50 into 6 is 300 mm. That way it is easy. That is why in field we always take as 50 times the diameter of the bar as the development length. Now coming to the next diagram. So this is a correct and wrong. Correct is the bottom diagram and wrong is the top diagram. So coming to the next diagram, you see here This is not a cantilever beam. Shape is the same, but beam is not cantilever because there are 3 supports. So we call it as a continuous beam. When the number of supports are more than 2, we see it as a continuous beam. Structural engineers know how this crack develops because they know fracture mechanics. But BTech students will have a doubt why over the center support the crack is developing. I think normally they believe that over a support the crack may not easily develop because it is supported plane. What happens is normally in any structure the columns at the ends will have less modulus of rigidity. Modulus of rigidity you have studied in design. They have less modulus of rigidity compared to the center column. So what happens is the deflection of the, see, any material deflects, whether it is a beam or column, it is supposed to deflect. I told that Burj Khalifa tower, one side amplitude is 4 feet so that it can move 8 feet apart. Even a simple beam, for example, you have got a beam of 4 meter span in your room, that can deflect more than 1 centimeter without anybody knowing it, because L by 356 is the permitted deflection. That deflection is permitted. So even if your beam of 4 meter span deflects by 1 centimeter, there is nothing wrong in it because by its nature, by its design is permitted to deflect. So when the deflection happens, especially columns can shrink under load, either due to the concrete or due to the subbase, it can shrink. When it shrinks, the shrinking will be more for the end columns compared to the mid column. So the mid column top will have what is called negative or tension loads, and that tension will make it crack, and this is the crack pattern which can develop. You see here how it can be prevented. It can be prevented by giving the reinforcement as in the bottom. Can you see it well? I think if you cannot see it well on your mobile, you can stretch the diagram on the mobile. On the laptop, it comes perfectly all right. But on the mobile, if you are not seeing it properly well, on Zoom, you can stretch it so that most of the software permit it. In Google also, you can stretch it and see it so that you can see how correctly that those things are given. Now we are coming on to the next diagram. This is called a grid beam. Grid beams are so many types. If one beam is crossing another beam, we call it as a grid beam. For example, in slab design, there is a typical type of slab with grid beam design. In one hotel in Palakkad, I have designed such a beam because they didn't want column inside. So they wanted a grid beam so that there is no column in the hall. So grid beams can be used for high span. For example, any span more than 5 meters uneconomical for supported beam. If it is more than 5 meters, the depth of the beam will be very heavy. Earlier in working stress method, a 5 meter beam used to have around 40 to 50 centimeters depth. But now the depth can be reduced because the limit state design reduces the depth. One more thing is the material quality have changed. Earlier we were using mostly M15 concrete, but nowadays we are using M20 and M25 concrete and steel also. At those times we were using mild steel. Mild steel is having say either 250 or 320, that range permissible tensile stress Newton per millimeter square. Now we are using high yield strength steel and HYSD steels and TMD steels. Available TMD steel now in Kerala is around 600 Newton per millimeter square, almost 2.5 times what we were doing then. So because of that reason, now the size of the cross section has reduced. But even then, if you have a say, once I had a requirement for designing the Anakotil of a temple. Anakotil is such a hall where the elephant stands and so many people will be standing. So its span has to be around 20 meters. Without beams, they wanted it. So such things we can go only for grid beams and grid slab. So such cases are many. Even in otherwise, many buildings will have crossing beams. In that case, the short beam is called the main beam and the long beam is called the sub beam. That is the procedure. The deeper will be the short beam. Length shorter is always deeper. Main beam is the one with the lesser span. Because the span is less, the main beam will be always stronger. That is why it is done like that. So when a main beam is crossing a sub beam, if the dimensions are equal, for example, in grid slab, we give the equal dimensions. The dimensions are equal. You see the top diagram. This is what we normally do. This is how the cross beam reinforcement is shown at the mid of it. You can just see it. I have shown it by rounds and colored so that you can see it clearly. That is how normally we give. But if you give there like that, everywhere at the beam to beam joint, you will see crack. I had to inspect a university's building, not Calicut University, another university's building in Kerala, which had this crack everywhere. And of course, it was clearly understood from the pattern itself, it is because the grid beam was given like what is given at top. I asked with the contractor, have you given like that? They agreed. They know this is how we know it. So they were not knowing what is given on the bottom side. That is how you have to give the reinforcement. And what is the speciality? You should have the reinforcement with hanger bars and closed spacing of stirrups. That is the ties or the stirrups have to be close enough up to 1.5 times the effective depth of the beam. Small d stands for effective depth. I am not going to explain what is effective depth. Anybody who cannot understand effective depth will not be able to understand this slide also. So taken for granted. Okay. Now see that diagram, it is self-explanatory. I don't have to explain what's a hanger. Okay. This recording, I think you are recording, you can give to all the participants, so that I don't advise to give this PPT, because any PPT comes out of a lot of effort. And we may have to use it even many times, suppose for training programs. And also, instead of giving the PPT, you can give the recorded, so that the PPT also will come in the record. This is what I suggest. Okay, can be given to all the participants, so they don't have to photograph or they don't have to draw it and all. It's not easy to do like that. Moreover, these are dimension drawings. If you draw it without dimension, it will look quite awkward. Now come to the next slide. This is the case when the sub-beams are also called secondary beams. When the sub-beams have a lesser dimension or lesser depth compared to the main beam. Say for example, the main beam is 30 centimeters. The sub-beam web is only 20 centimeters. It will look like this. See here how it is done. Again, self-explanatory. Those who have studied the fundamental of engineering graphics can understand this. Just see it. Okay, now come to the next slide. This slide you see on top, it's an incorrect method of bending bars. You know that after crossing the point of contraflexion or point of inflection in a beam, you can bend the bars upwards, because at the supports we need more bars on the top, because support normally the bending moment is at top, and at the midspan the bending moment is at bottom, and we have to reinforce the concrete where the bending moment is more, so that the tensile bending moment is resisted by the steel part. And tensile bending moment in RCC beam is more at the support at top and more at the midspan at bottom. So this is how we give this is a theoretical diagram, the top diagram. But never do that theoretical diagram, it is dangerous, because due to many reasons, the point of contraflexion may have slight change, first thing. Second thing is, the stresses in nowadays we don't bend the bars like this, but I have shown bending because it's easy to show. You can just cut the bars, that is what people do. Just cut it on bottom and you cut it, and top at the same level, you cut it. Never cut it at the same level. You should cut it with extra development length on both sides. Otherwise, there is a phenomenon in concrete which is called pull-out. Pull-out is very dangerous in concrete. So many research theses have been there on the pull-out phenomena. I think in Anna University itself, I could value 3 PhD theses of pull-out behavior of concrete. So definitely the bars will pull out. Nowadays, the pull-out danger is less because we are having twisted bars. Most of the HVAC bars or most of the TMD bars are having Tor mark on it, because it's a twisted mark is there. So that will improve the bondage. Bond strength will be improved compared to mild steel, which was very. So nowadays the pull-out problem is not heavily there, but still don't cut the reinforcement at the same level. Extend them, overlap them a bit. That is very essential. And while cutting them, don't cut at the same point. You have to cut it at only 2 levels. This I always tell the field supervisors. They don't know this. They cut at the same point. Even if you are cutting or bending, don't cut at, say there are 6 bars, cut 2 at one point, 2 at the other point, so that the point of inflection comes somewhere in between. That is what we want. Moreover, where these bars are being cut, the stirrups have to be closer. That I have shown elsewhere, because there is a possibility for more shear also, because any differential angle in the reinforcement also can cause shear. That's also there. Okay, now coming to the next slide. You see here, most of the people just take span by 4 for cutting. Span by 4 means 0.25 L. If you take 0.25 L, they feel it is all right. But it is true for long beams. But if the span is very less and the load is very high, especially in beams like bridge beams and all, this becomes very dangerous. Say for example, a span of only 2 meters, but the load is in very heavy. Cutting it at 0.5 meters will not be safe for the beam. So it is suggested that even if you see, for example, the bridge, the depth of the beam will be very high. I just got an example. Recently, I had to design a bridge where the depth of the beam is almost 2.5 meters. See, your height will be around 1.5 to 1.8 meters. The depth of a beam in that bridge is 2.5 meters. So bridge beams are normally like that. Even with the latest limit state we are designing, it will be very, earlier the bridge beams used to be 3 or 4 meters sometimes. There are bridges like that. But pre-stressed bridge can reduce the depth of the beam very high. That's why we prefer pre-stressed beams nowadays. Most of the newly built bridges are pre-stressed, and you could have seen that this metro and all using heavy beams, the depth is not more than 2 meters anywhere, 1 to 2 meters only, because it is all highly pre-stressed with a high quality tendons with high yield strength capacities. That is different. But these are all usual things. And you see that instead of giving span by 4, at everywhere you have to give at least 1.5 deep. The depth of the beam is more. The depth is less, give the top one. But it is better that the second one is adopted so that you are always safe. And one more thing is, most of our engineers do have a belief that the steel has to be maximum at the mid-span bottom. That is a wrong notion. That concept will hold only for short beams. Maybe for 3 to 4 meters, the bending moment in the beam will be highest at the mid-span bottom. But long beams, 5 meters or 6 meters, the bending moment will be highest at the support top, at the top side of the support. That is why, again, I had to inspect a building where the top of the slab is broken everywhere at supports. What is the reason? Because at the top of the slab, the beam flange is the top of the slab. At the top of the slab and the support, the reinforcement is insufficient. There is a wrong concept among most of the civil engineers that the reinforcement has to be higher at the support, at the mid-span lower level. It is wrong. The span is more, the highest reinforcement. Say for example, you have got 316 mm at mid-span at bottom. It may be 516 mm. I've done so many designs where the support top reinforcement is almost double that of the mid-span bottom reinforcement. Keep in mind, designers will know this, but due to some preconceived notions, they do this mistake. That also you have to keep in mind. Now see the next slide. Continuous beam. Yes, you see that? It is self-explanatory. There are some crack points. What this crack point you know by now. These are points of stress concentration. At the crack points, the concrete will crack. You may ask the question, if the concrete cracks at its bottom, reinforcement is there, what is wrong? No. The concrete cracks at bottom, the reinforcement is exposed to water and air, it will rust. So we cannot permit the concrete to crack anywhere. If at all you see any crack, you fill it with filler material immediately. Even it has no structural purpose. You know that very well, it's not going to affect the structure immediately, but you close it with so many gel materials are available now. Nowadays in the market, you get spraying type material, which you can immediately, it's all nano materials, which you can just spray over and fill the gap so rusting can be prevented. See the correct method? The steel has to come to the support up to 0.1 L so that the crack can be avoided. At the bottom, steel is more important coming because bottom crack is there. Crack is not at top. Reverse also is possible. Crack can be at top if the top reinforcement is not sufficient at the support. That also can happen. Just see it. Now come to the next slide. This is self-explanatory. The top diagram shows how people do it, and bottom diagram shows how it is to be done. No need for explanation. The crack position I have colored so that you can immediately, these are all not imagination. I have seen there this most of the places. Because you know that while working as a teacher, we were permitted to do consultancy also. So we were consultants to government as well as private organizations. And while going to the site for checking the reinforcement, we see all these mistakes and we ask them to correct. Many places we had to ask them to take out the reinforcement and then redo it. Because after construction, when something goes wrong, we have to go for inspection. Then we find that all these mistakes are there. So many buildings we had to even repair the roof or remove the roof like that. That can be avoided if the reinforcement is given in the proper way. That is why I am giving this information so that this mistake is not committed unaware by the engineers, because these are not available in textbooks. Whatever I have discussed so far, it's not available in textbook. You have to learn by this. That's why I told you will get the recording. You can go through it when you get enough time, especially field engineers. This will be useful to you. Now come to the next slide. How to reinforce a cantilever. These type of cantilevers come mostly, even sunshade in a building is a cantilever like this. Even a sunshade, then porch, car porch will be cantilever. See how the reinforcement is given. Main thing which you have to note here is there should be sufficient steel. Steel should not be less. You know that if AST is the tensile steel which you use in this section, at least 0.5 AST should come at top end, up to top end. And then minimum 0.25 AST. AST is the area of steel in tension. That is AST. Similarly, the most important thing is you see the right side. That anchoring bar should not be cut at top. It should come to a depth of LD, development length. LD, I told it is around 50 D. 50 times C. For example, if you are using a 6 mm bar, LD is 300 mm. Approximately. It's 47 D, but we approximate as 50 D. Okay. You see there. This is a mistake commonly seen. That is why wherever you go, the car porch and the sunshades will have break, crack at the joint with the wall, because the reinforcement is like that. Simple care can overtake many of the mistakes. See the next one, next slide. A sloping beam. Yes. This I am very particular about you, because you know at a time when that Baker model construction was progressing, many of the local agencies went for such type of folded plate construction. This is called folded plate construction. Many of the schools, I had inspected so many schools where the roof was cracked like this and water is leaking. And instead of removing this roof, I checked the reinforcement and asked them to then cap it with ferro cement on the top. If you give a 1-inch thickness layer of ferro cement, leaking you can immediately prevent. But ensure that it is structurally safe. But structurally, to be safe, it has to be like what is given at the bottom. That is the correct method. You see that? Very easy to give it, but you should know it, that's all. Nowadays, I insist the contractor that you have to do like this. Maybe steel may be around 20% more, but it has to be, otherwise the roof will crack. And moreover, in buildings like schools where kids are sitting below that, you cannot permit the roof to leak and crack one time. It cannot be. That's why this is very essential. See the next one. Haunch beams. Many places we give haunch beams because the stress concentration at the joint is very high. Beam column junction is a very important area of study. So many theses have come out. If you search on it, you can see so many PhD theses on beam column. Why should I go to that level? Even my PG, I was studying the semi-rigidity nature of this beam column junction. So it's a point of lot of study, and you can see that crack will develop as shown in the top if the reinforcement is given that way. You see the reinforcement there that is going from one end to the other end. Simply it is bent. You should not give like that. Give the reinforcement as given at the bottom side. The difficulty I know with many engineers, they cannot learn these things from textbook. This can be learned over a lot of years of experience, maybe 20, 30 years of experience with designing and supervision. And by the time somebody learns it by themselves, it will take a lot of years. So it's better you learn from somebody's experience. And of course, these things you can take care in your construction. See the next slide. just to show how the stress concentration takes place. That red colored areas are where the tensile stress will be the highest, that corner area. Okay, that stress diagrams are also shown there. What is the tension and compression? Now come to the next slide. Two beams are shown there. One is an incorrect method and one is a correct method. The correct method is right side, because in studying reinforced concrete, the students are taught that you have to give tension steel at bottom and compression steel at top at mid span, and vice versa at center span, at the support span. But the reality is, if the beam is more than half a meter deep, if more than 450 millimeters or even more than 500 millimeters, half a meter, you may wonder where this half a meter deep beam comes, because nowadays so many commercial buildings are coming, malls, industrial buildings, bridges, everywhere more than 50 centimeter beams are coming. You may not be seeing it because some wall will be attached to that. That's all. Beam will be very, very deep. In such beams, if you don't give lateral reinforcement, the beam becomes very weak. And obviously, in deep beams, there's a theory, the longitudinal stresses can also have an impact on the lateral stresses. Those who have studied gantry girders will be knowing it. Most of the gantry girders we design with steel because it is equally effective in longitudinal and lateral stress. But if at all you have to go for a gantry beam with concrete, definitely this will become concerned. Not only that, in any deep beam, you have to see that you have to give side reinforcement also. And a part of this reinforcement can replace the top steel and bottom steel. The remaining has to be extra. Design procedure I am not going to explain now, but spacing is given in the equation there. Stirrups taken around also given by the equation there. And what should be the minimum requirement is also given there. Minimum requirement is 0.2% of the cross-sectional area. That is there. Of course, I could have explained all these slides in long time, but time doesn't permit. Moreover, you'll be given this, you can have a self-study. If you don't understand any of the things given here, you can take any good book of RCC and then verify it. Only thing is, the theory will be given in the books, but not these diagrams. Okay. Now come to the next one. Cantilever with point load. Normally in cantilevers, we give top reinforcement and bottom reinforcement. If they are having heavy point load, this can come, say for example, the gantry girder is one best example. When an RCC column is there on the side, there will be cantilever like this, on which that blue color you can take as the gantry girder, which is resting there. Gantry girder will have so much tons of load, many times 20 tons, 50 tons, like that load will be there. So such a load is working, you should not limit the reinforcement with top reinforcement and bottom reinforcement. You must definitely give side reinforcement to take extra shear, and that should be given for a total depth of 2/3 of the effective depth of the beam. That is the rule. And this also, in one or two books I have seen that this is given in explanatory notes, but not correctly with a picture like this. So understand this. Now coming to the next one. When an opening is given in a beam. In earlier days, we were not concerned about these openings because we never used to cut a beam. But that is not the case now. Now people want the duct. Theoretically speaking, below the neutral axis and above the bottom reinforcement, the steel is only a supporting material, not structural material. You can replace it with some other material also if necessary. But since we cannot have the homogeneous nature of the frame, we are having concrete. So there is no theoretical mistake in cutting the concrete. You can cut the concrete just below the neutral axis. And if you want to lift the neutral axis up, you can have the flange thickness more. There are methods for that. When you cut the section, you see the top diagram, that is how people reinforce it. And you can immediately see after 1 or 2 years that red colored cracks will be developing. See that? So what is the way out? This many people have asked me how to handle it. Because nowadays cutting beam is very common. Because your pipes, your electrical ducts, your drainage ducts, etc., you are taking through the beam. So beam has to be cut. And let it be cut. There is no problem. You, while constructing itself, you keep some hollow material there and just remove it and you get the cut portion. That's all right. And the web is cut. But it should be done as given at the lower diagram. Keep in mind. Otherwise, these are very dangerous because most of the time I've seen that they make these cuts at different places. Truly speaking, beam is not to be cut. It will reduce the strength of the beam. But due to unavoidability, we are doing it. See that? Okay. Now come to the next diagram. Beam column junction. Beam column junction, I told it's a point of weakness in any structure. That's why so much research is going on it in steel. And beam column junction, I'm not going to this because this is one subject where I have done almost 6 months research work for my PG. So just understand this much. In beam column junction, the stress concentration is so high that the reinforcement has to be placed like this. Instead of just having the reinforcement splayed for a little length, the reinforcement at the end of the beam has to go to both sides sufficiently deep so that pulling out effect is not there. First thing. Second thing is, at beam column junction, the lateral forces are quite common in the beams, and the beam should have definitely lateral reinforcement up to a distance of at least LD. At least LD. LD is development length. That is what the lower diagram says. Now come to the next diagram. This is a common mistake I see in the field. And this is mentioned in the IS 456. But many people don't care it. It is clearly mentioned that when you have to splice the reinforcement, that means you have to cut and continue the reinforcement of a column. The lower reinforcement come outside and the upper reinforcement should go inside. Then only the core of the beam means between reinforcement, whatever is the concrete is called the core. In that case only, that is, you see here on the right side, the correct position is given. The side reinforcement is going inside and the cover is coming on the outside, and that core can fully take the load. In the left case, the core cannot fully take the load because the upper reinforcement can have a punching action. It is carrying load. It can have punching shear and the column can fail. So the left thing is incorrect and the right thing is the correct one. This is given in IS code, but people don't care it much because it's not this way explained. And moreover, where the splicing, this is called splicing of reinforcement. Wherever the splicing is there, the spacing has to be only half the spacing. Suppose S is the spacing elsewhere. Here the spacing, at least for a development length on both sides, should be only half of that. Now come to the next reinforcement. Suppose you have to cut down the size of a column when you go up. This is a very common thing because in tall buildings, say for example, I have designed a building at Palakkad which is only 6-story. In my analysis, I found that after every 2-story, I can reduce the bottom level, the size of the column was almost 1 meter. And I found that at the top, it requires only around 40 centimeters. So this 1 meter to 40 centimeter has to be gradually cut at different stages. Remember, cutting should be always done just above a floor. Below the floor, it should be of the same size. Just above the floor, you can reduce the size. You see the diagram 1 and 2. But remember, at that time, you have to give the reinforcement as given here. Otherwise, what will happen is crack will develop there. You should have an extra splicing there so that the dowel bars will go topwards and the main reinforcement of the column will come downwards. I'm sorry that those who don't have a fundamental knowledge of reinforcement will not be able to understand these things. I'm helpless in that case because for them we can have some base level discussions later. This is for those who know it. Just see the second diagram and understand it. Reinforcements are all given. Now come to the next slide. Termination of columns inside beam. Say for example, you are having only a single-storied building which is on columns. When the columns end the slab or beam, it has to be cut. So while cutting, the top position is the incorrect method. Incorrect method means you just cut and bend the top reinforcement of the column. You just bend the main reinforcement. No, that's not enough. The bending of the main reinforcement of the column should go to the full width of the column. Otherwise, whenever such reversal of stresses are coming, their crack will develop. Especially if an earthquake comes. If it is not bent like this, definitely there is a possibility of separation. Earthquake is such a powerful mechanism. The crack mechanism, I think, I don't know whether the students have studied that failure mechanism of beams and columns. We are studying so many mechanisms, beam mechanism, column mechanism, combined mechanism, etc. So here, the combined mechanism will be more dangerous. Obviously, a framed building is very effective in containing earthquake. A very well-framed RCC building can contain an earthquake even up to 8.59 Richter scale. But an ordinary brick-walled building can take only up to say 6 to 7 on Richter scale. Not even 7 is very difficult. That is why in RCC framed buildings you have to be careful that anyway we are spending on concrete. Then why not spend something extra, 0.1% extra on steel, so that it can become stronger. See the next slide then. I was mentioning about earthquake. This is how in earthquake region, left side is for ordinary region, right side is for earthquake region. See the difference? The bars are not spliced like this. Pull out and separation can occur in earthquake. Earthquake is such a phenomena. There will be horizontal acceleration as well as vertical acceleration. Horizontal acceleration is what is called lateral movement. Vertical acceleration is what is called thumping. So both can happen. You have studied the P waves, S waves, etc. Each wave is having its own different action. So joint should be given in such a way that lateral movement as well as vertical movement it can stand. That is how it has to be given like this. See the right diagram which is advisable. And now Kerala also is in the earthquake region. You know that. Earlier we were exempted. Now Kerala is also in the earthquake region. So it's better to follow these norms. And out of different earthquake regions, Palakkad is a very prominent destination for earthquake, because you know that the basic theory of earthquake is that wherever fault planes are there in the rock, earthquake is more prone. And there is such a fault plane going through Palakkad Walayar area, and there is such a prominent fault plane going through Trivandrum area that that dam, I forgot its name. There is a arboreum and all in that dam. I'm not recollecting that name. In that dam area, there is a, it's in the border of Trivandrum district. In that dam area, there is a, not Nayar Dam. Somebody has put Nayar, not Nayar Dam, that dam name I forgot. It's on the way to Tengashi from Trivandrum. It's a border near Aryangav. I forgot it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. If the earthquake occurs there, even Trivandrum city will be affected. I think I once cautioned this to the people in wherever fault planes are there. You would have seen that now last week so many small earthquakes will be there in Idukki district, but very small. There is nothing to be afraid of. Only 2 to 3 range. It becomes dangerous only above 6. So dangerous to dams and all. But the earth dams, Mullaperiyar Dam can break even below 5. But Idukki Dam cannot break at that level. It can break only at the range of say 9 or 8 plus range only. Okay. Now coming back to the next one. Again, one more diagram I've shown for earthquake range. Earthquake range, all the columns should have close spacing of the shear reinforcements, especially at the supports, end supports. That is what this diagram shows. Spacing of shear and reinforcement columns should be very close in the end region compared to the normal place. That's always to be careful. Earthquake has got a very real effect on shear. Shear stress will be more in earthquake region. So all that shear reinforcement, it is better to give in earthquake regions almost 25 to 50 times. There is a detailed workout mechanism for that. That I'm not telling here. I'm just introducing you. It's possible. It's required. Now coming to the continuous beam in earthquake region, it should be like this. See, the top gives a continuous beam in an ordinary case, and the bottom diagram gives how continuous beams should be in earthquake region. You see there, U-shaped bars are given at the end of the beam in the earthquake region. Otherwise, the earthquake region, the column and beam can separate. If you have seen any earthquake failure on TV and all, you can identify some of the joints will be separated. So that joint separation can be avoided if such reinforcement is given. Now the next slide. This is a reinforcement of a footing with a column. This is what I have shown in the beginning. I have explained it a bit here. Left is the incorrect method, but we all do that. Right is the correct method. We all have to do that. Whenever we excavate buildings which were done in the British period, that right correct method is followed. That's why those buildings are still good. They never compromised on the theory and practice. But we compromise it, we make the left one. Maybe whenever there is no earthquake or no pullout, why our buildings are not cracking still? I remember my professor who taught me soil structure interaction at Bombay. He used to tell the reason for why the buildings are not collapsing. Because the soil is a continuous, material. Being a continuum, it has its own induced spring nature. So the soil structure interaction we simulate by spring action. That is why if you go for any advanced textbook on soil structure interaction, the spring model is there. Because the soil has got that flexibility, the footing is not cracking. If the footing is on rock, it would have definitely cracked. That is just an escape mechanism. Now see the next diagram. It's a typical reinforcement details of a hammer foundation or heavy machine foundation. Most of the engineering colleges will have heavy machines like UTM, CTM, etc. Many places when I go, I see that footing has cracked. The reason is they make the reinforcement as shown on top. They make the reinforcement as shown on the bottom. That foundation, machine foundation will not crack. This the college administrators can keep in mind whenever you go for a new machine foundation. You have to resort to this material. Now coming to the next slide. Whenever the beam is having a trench is required nowadays heavily because you will have to take something over it. So earlier days we never used to make trench in beam because trench is a weak thing in a beam. Trenches are always, suppose you have a very strong man and his legs are weak. What is the point? That like that in a beam you are making so much strength and you are giving a cutting on it, and that is becoming a weak point. It's very useless. But if it's very necessary, you can go to the reinforcement pattern given at the bottom, on the bottom side. Bottom gives the correct reinforcement. Just see it. These are all self-explanatory. I don't have to tell you why this reinforcement, how it is given, etc. They demonstrate themselves. For our seeing is believing. Now see the next one. A staircase with a waste slab. The top is the usual pattern we give. That is why in many of the houses, just at the beginning of the landing, above the waste slab, you can see cracks. For example, some period when I was working at Trivandrum, my quarters was having a staircase where both the ends of the waste slab were broken. Immediately I could understand the reinforcement pattern is this. So to avoid that, you should have the reinforcement pattern which is given at bottom. I'm not telling the bar diameter, bar spacing, etc., because that will depend on the span of the staircase and how much thickness you are giving to the waste slab, etc. That is different. Design I'm not telling. How the pattern of reinforcement should be like. Now coming to the next slide. This is a slabless staircase. Instead of slab, we make the step itself slab. This is one method. See, you see the top diagram. Many people simply bend it like that and give. It is very wrong. I think 1 or 2 places I have seen such a staircase which is shown at top, which hangs like like a rope. It has formed into that. It's like a catenary, so that it's parabolic shape it is attaining by itself. Because the reinforcement is given at the top. It is very dangerous. Don't give it. One method is to give stirrups in both sides, both ways. That is vertical stirrup. See the stirrups on the right side, vertical stirrups and horizontal stirrups, and connect them strongly, so that they won't. Once a concrete is put, they will be stable. Till the concrete is put, they will be a bit mobile. But once the concrete consolidated, but there is one more better method. Other better method is to give like this, the bottom side, not the top. When I advise somebody to make the staircase like this, I advise only this method, not the other method. This is stronger. This will never fail even in earthquake. The other one can fail in earthquake, but this will not fail. See, and in earthquake, stair is one of the most important because any evacuation can be done only if stair is there. So in earthquake, the most important thing is your stair and your roof. This one, the bottom one is the correct one. not top one. Top one, of course, the top one is the reinforcement, how it is bent. And alternate one, and out of alternate one and alternate two, I suggest alternate two as the better, but alternate one is also good, not bad. Now, sir, the next one, this has no much concern. This is available in IS core. If you know the bar diameter, how to calculate the approximate development length. I told instead of this calculation, you just take 50. For example, in 8 mm bar, the development length is 376. If you take 50D, it will be 400. It's better, only slight difference. Instead of taking 47D, you take 50D for easy thumb rule. These are all thumb rules. Now, next slide. Now, I have given a listing of do's and don'ts. You see here, all the next slides you can show one by one because they can be read and understood. These things are available in many IS codes. I have taken from them. So I suggest whatever I have shown so far, you cannot easily get from textbooks and all. Whatever is from here onwards, please show the slide one by one so that it comes in the recording. So that keep it for some time. So that recording, when you send to the participants, they can read it. They can pause there and read it. Then next one. Next one. Yeah, keep that last slide there itself. Don't change it because it has got my email ID and phone number. I know that consultant or practicing engineers keep the last slide with my Thanksgiving. Consulting engineers may need my email ID or phone number at work site. I know that. In that case, definitely you can contact me and my service I can give you whenever you need some consulting on advanced topics like this. And of course, I'm sorry that all these slides I didn't read. You can read and understand yourself. It's so easy. Whatever I have just passed it by. Because my energy is almost over. This is the third webinar I'm having today. Nowadays, this has become a usual practice. Now, let me see what are the questions you have posted. I'm seeing in the chat box. Anybody having questions can put in the chat box. I'll read one by one and the answers. And after that, if time permits, you can unmute people. But till then, if unmuted, sound disturbance will be very heavy. Let me explain after that. See what are the comments.
Okay, sir.
I think some other comments only. Continue, sir. It's all right, sir. Like that. Let me see whether subject comment is there. Nobody has written any subject comment.
So there is one question from Aishwarya.
Yes.
How can we say that the crack will come exactly at that point?
How can we say that?
Crack will come exactly at that point.
Yeah, Aishwarya can learn a bit of fracture mechanics. Advanced analysis methods are available. Based on the homogeneity or heterogeneity of the materials, we can put the input parameters. Now even softwares are available to identify the exact crack point. But in a metallic material, say in iron or steel or aluminum, we can predict the crack with complete precision because it's a homogeneous material. Whereas concrete is a heterogeneous material, so some slight variation is possible. Like our weather forecasting, suppose you say it may rain at Calicut, maybe it can rain at Ramanattukara. That much approximation you have to do. But anyway, it's almost predictable because only, say for example, in an RCC, its coarse aggregate is present at the point predicted. Maybe at the coarse aggregate, the crack will not develop. At the edge of it only, it will develop. It can be predicted by so much equations are available now for predicting these things. When you study fracture mechanics, you will understand it. It's possible because we predict based on. That is why you are now studying shear force diagram, bending moment diagram, torsional rigidity. All these things you are studying for this purpose only. You use it when you want to theoretically calculate it. But experienced people can predict with a somewhat required accuracy, because in a beam, when we see something, we can say that at this point the crack may develop, please do like that. That is coming out of heuristics. Heuristics is nothing but experience added with basic knowledge. You can say so many things. Say, for example, a person who is a structural designer for 10 years, 10 or 15 years, without calculating can say for this much span, for this much load, how much is the reinforcement you require. How? Because they would have already designed a structure very similar. So they know how much the reinforcement, many times it happens. For example, when we are walking around in the field and all, people all of a sudden come and ask, sir, this is a reinforcement we give, is it right? Maybe within 5 minutes you'll be able to give the answer, because such a case would have come across earlier. That is possible only for experienced people. But freshers, you have to calculate. Anybody, the first thing which a designer encounters when he designs first is the fear whether the structure will stand there. Anybody who goes to structural design will have this fear. But when you do 5 to 10 designs, you are confident that your structures are standing. That is how confidence comes. So don't start the design alone. Any designer should stay with somebody like a guru, learn the design with him, and convince yourself that your designs are standing. Then only become independent. Okay. Anything next?
The next question from Mr. Anand Vijayan. Sir, which kind of staircase is better, slab or slabless?
Really speaking, slab staircase is better with a waist slab. It is economical also. Then why we go for slabless staircase? Show purpose. In some dining rooms, some halls and all, some drawing halls and all, they want to show the staircase side exposed, and it has to be in a very neat design with timber clad or some marble clad or something. There, the slab staircase may not be as good looking as the second one, that is in the stair shape. That is why, just for better visibility or ornamentation, we are going for such things. Theoretically, slab staircase is more economical and stronger.
The next question from Ms. Arya KS. Sir, which is the best material for filling of cracks?
Nowadays, a very good material is available. You can buy it in, like you have the hit bottle. Hit bottle, like the hit bottle, you can press and fill it. That is nano material. It's available in the market. So many companies are coming up with, and Fixit is coming with it. Then Four-Stroke is coming with it. Even colorless are available, colored are also available. Just spray it into the crack and then just level it by means of some level edge, even a scale, and it becomes level. It's good material. But if it is a longer crack, you will have to go for waterproof cementitious materials which are available in market. So any material, it's now around 300 plus products are available readily on the market, and more than 3,000 are available in the country on order. So if you just go to Calicut market, you can buy hundreds of materials which can use for crack filling. Even that is not required. Now on the internet, you can find the names of people who do this crack filling. For example, one of my neighbors wanted to fill some cracks. I didn't go anywhere. I told him, just you see the net, see the number and give me. He brought the number from the net, and I called the person and asked his terms and conditions, because I thought a person who knows this thing should ask him. And he gave the quotation and we did it immediately. That is possible. So you don't have to go around anywhere. Just see the net. Crack filling, concrete crack filling, so many thousands of people are available. They'll just come and fill and go. If you do want to yourself, better go for nano gel, which will fill and which will prevent water and air entry also. Okay.
Next question from Ms. Aditya Joseph. Why we are not using ferrocement practically to avoid cracks?
See, ferrocement, I don't know whether everybody is aware about ferrocement. Ferrocement is actually a cement mortar mix with a very thin layer of steel mesh inside. The thickness of ferrocement will vary from 10 mm to 40 mm. That is 1 centimeter to 4 centimeter. Most of the commonly used ferrocement sheets are 2 centimeters. 2 centimeter ferrocement is watertight. It prevents water. See, for IS 456 says if concrete has to be watertight, it should be minimum 12.5 centimeters. Whereas ferrocement can be watertight even if it is, only 2 centimeters. That's its advantage. But from the point of view of use, there is some difficulty. The difficulty is that, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello? Are you hearing me?
Yes,
sir.
yes.
Okay. From the point of view of tensile strength, ferrocement is very good. But it's only very thin element. Its flexural rigidity is very less. So if you use ferrocement for a span of more than 2 meters, it will bend. It will not remain straight. That is one disadvantage with ferrocement. But one thing is there, over another strong surface, if you put ferrocement, you can waterproof it without entering water. Another technique is go for shell structures or folded plate structures. They have to be, the disadvantage with shell or folded plate is that the thickness can be very small, but their shape has to be perfect. That is a difficulty. So if you can go for such structures, definitely this will be good.
Next question from Mr. Sunny Kumar. Can we fill crack in institute building beams or columns cracked like slope as designed by you?
Can you fill institute building cracks?
Can we fill crack in institute building beams or slopes, column cracks like slope designed as you said?
If the design is correct, crack will not be there. If the cracks are there, cracks are very difficult to repair because there are two types of crack, surface cracks and structural cracks. Surface cracks, you just inject some material, it will get leveled, and for 5 to 10 years, no problem. But structural crack, which comes out of insufficient reinforcement or incorrect placing of reinforcement, it's very difficult to correct because even if you fill the crack will develop. We can have some mechanism by which we can study the crack development. So when the crack is developing, it is advisable to go for some structural remedy. There are methods like stitching available, but that cannot be given as a general answer because we have to structural crack down generalized. Each structural crack will be for a particular reason, and you should take the help of an experienced person to see that and remedy it. Otherwise, don't apply the same medicine for all the disease. Especially surface cracks, if you fill something, it will be all right. Maybe after a long gap, some more crack may develop, you can again fill it. But structural cracks are not like that. Okay.
Next question from Mr. Praveen Kumar. By providing additional reinforcement at the compression zone of the structural members for the strength, does we make our structures more prone to brittle failure and seismic loads?
Yeah, I never told that you have to give excess. You have to give the requirement. Giving excess steel will always make the structure brittle. Not only that, there is one more danger which I didn't mention that way. Earlier days we used to use mild steel. Mild steel is actually better from the earthquake point of view because before cracking, it has got a phenomenon what is called yielding. It will just elongate in its length for so much time and then only it will fail. So by the time if the earthquake is coming and the building is collapsing, you get a gap, you can escape. But this HYSD steel bars and TMT steel bars, that is high yield strength deformed bars and thermomechanically treated bars, they don't give any such indication. They are very high strength, but they break all of a sudden. If their ultimate strength is over, they immediately crack without giving any indication. The building can collapse immediately. So that risk is there. That is one risk. Another risk, when we were earlier having the working stress method of design, we were assuming a factor of safety of 2 for steel and 3 for concrete. And the average used to be around 2 and 3. But because of the construction procedure we use, the samples tested, because the material quality was somewhat good, around 5 to 8 is the factor of safety which we get when we test the old concrete samples. But nowadays we are giving factor of safety for the loads, not for material. So that is what is called the limit state method. Only 1.5 is given. So the structures are more susceptible to failure. So that is why I feel the new RCC structures will not have the same lifespan of the older structures. It will be less. But one thing is there, now the materials are good. For example, earlier we used to use 33 grade concrete. Now you can make even up to recently 150 grade concrete was made in some German lab. It's possible. And in most of the construction in Burj Khalifa Tower, 80 to 100 Newton per millimeter square strength concrete is used. So high strength concrete is available and high strength steel also. Earlier our steel was 230 or 250 Newton per millimeter square safe strength. Now the ultimate strength of the TMT available is 600 and 650 in India. In many of the foreign countries, you get a steel up to 150 1500 Newton per millimeter square. So it has gone up. Maybe because of that advantage, our structures may not easily fail. Otherwise, just going by the material factor safety alone, it is dangerous. And moreover, if a properly designed one is not used, it can collapse. That is there. It will definitely increase the rigidity, no doubt. Addition of steel always make the structure brittle, provided it is not mild steel.
The next question is from Mr. Bharat. How to calculate the length of bar in column in which there are different diameter of bars so that overlapping length will be also different? Then how to maintain staggered position of bars in column?
This calculation is there in quantity surveying in the 8th semester. You will study there. If you are not in the 8th semester, you will study there. It's a procedure to be done. Cannot be explained within 1 or 2 minutes here. You will study in the 8th semester better, civil better.
Next question from Mr. Anand Balakrishnan. Sir, would you consider any other reinforcement material as an alternate for steel?
At present, no. No other good alternatives available. Available materials are, say, glass fiber reinforcement is there. It's very costly, unaffordable. But now, within 10 or 20 years, this reinforcement concrete as a construction material will vanish. We are going to an era where modular construction using polymers and nanomaterials are going to take over. So the wall of a building may be only, say, 1 mm, but bulletproof. So construction technology is going to change because over 1.5 centuries, we are fed up with this concrete. So concrete may be used only for, say, some dead weight at bottom or something like that. We may go to new materials. It will come up soon. And the construction technology also will change. From concrete, it may change over to, say, modular construction with the prefabricated modules. In that module, some places like even ferrocement module is still a good thing. Ferrocement, you need cement. Ferrocement is normally made of 1:2 or 1:3 proportion cement and sand. So it can take that way. So don't worry about finding now new reinforcement material. Find new construction material.
Next question is from Ms. Arundhati. Is epoxy resin good for crack? And she has asked another question. Does nanogel increase the strength of structures?
See, many of these nanogels are based on epoxy mixes only. Epoxy mixes are added with nanogels and they are performing this purpose. Earlier, before nanomaterials came to use, epoxy mixes were only used for cracking because they are elastic. And unless ultraviolet rays fall on them, they will remain elastic. Ultraviolet rays, for example, if they are in direct sunlight, they become rigid. Most of the epoxy materials, because they are petroleum derivatives, they rigidize when you expose them to sunlight. So in such places where sunlight is there, cementitious materials, derivative of cement, ferrocement, etc. will be better. So in open surface, exposed to sun. On all interiors, you can use epoxy or nanogel or epoxy mixed with nanogel is all right.
The next question is from Mr. Vikas Nikam. In the slide of secondary beam, grid beam, the bottom reinforcements are shown out of sit-ups. Can you explain it?
Bottom reinforcements are shown out of?
Stirrups.
Okay. At the beam point, because you know that the stirrups will be having inside the main reinforcement. So they cannot be bent upwards. If you bend upwards, the stirrup thickness and the main reinforcement thickness will have to be taken upwards. So the effective depth of the steel will reduce. That is why just crossing the beam, that beam will be taken down. That is normally done. What we normally do is at that point, the longitudinal section will have a steel slightly bent upwards, the main steel slightly bent upwards, and the crossing beam, the sub-beam still kept up the normal bottom level of the reinforcement. Of course, this needs a pictorial view to explain, but it is done like that.
The next question is from Ms. Selvapriya Rajendran. In water tank, beam get damaged roads are corroded and shown what is precautions to be taken or need to be reconstructed.
Water tank you can easily deal. Water tank, I feel if you just ask some water repellent application teams, there are some application teams right now, people are available. They plaster it with water repellent material. Water repellent material is nothing but high strength cement, maybe 53 grade cement added with water repellent materials. That they will make a layer inside, 1-inch layer. And that will be, and over that inside they will spray water repellent epoxy. like a plastic coating, it will remain there. So repairing is available. All these people are available on net. Their advantage is, even if you want to do some work at Kozhikode, even an Ernakulam person will come and do it and go. They'll do it in a day and they'll go. And only you have to pay for it. It's available. No problem.
Just asked another question. Existing beam to strengthen using of basalt fiber reinforced polymer sheet and epoxy resin. How does it work?
I have seen that studies in journals. There are so many studies, because when students go for some master's thesis or a PhD thesis, they work on something which is not available. Whether it clicks or not is not a concern. Really speaking, it's like doing a surgery on a healthy person. You know what will happen? It will have so many attached complications. And these are all not tested. Moreover, it cannot be done for long area. It cannot be done for long span. And moreover, you have to spoil the beam which is existing right now. And when you want to insert into the beam, beam will have to be cut. That can be cut either by a concrete cutter or a vibrating machine. Again, the beam will spoil its strength. So on the long run, what I suggest is, if you feel a beam is very weak, just support it with a steel beam. It's the easiest way. I have asked people to do it many places, because steel is such a material, even after 100 years, it's not going to flop, whereas all these fibers can fail. So suppose you feel a beam is very weak, you want to strengthen it, give a flange, additional flange of a steel plate and tie it to the beam. It will be preserved for a long time. That's the best remedy. And this we have done many places. And paint it like concrete, nobody will know it's a steel piece.
There are a few more questions. I will ask one or two. This is another from Mr. Praveen Kumar. Sir, researchers on sustainable replacement for the steel suggest that bamboo can match the tensile strength of Fe 500. If it's so, what are the reinforcement problems we will going to face?
Okay, I can tell you, this is an area, you know that I've been closely associated with State Nirmati Kendra. I've been their advisor for a long time. There we have tested all these things. There is a bamboo research institute in China which has got around 3,000 plus varieties of bamboo. There is another bamboo research institute in Bangalore in India where over 300 varieties of bamboos are available. Some of those bamboos have got very high strength but very short length. Some bamboos which are very long has got very less strength. You see the difficulty? If high strength bamboos are available in high length, we can go for reinforcement. One thing. Second thing is, bamboos are biodegradable and concrete is non-biodegradable. Concrete will strengthen on years to years if there is no steel inside. Only the steel is making concrete weak. Otherwise, the concrete as such will only strengthen every year by year. The more the curing time goes on, it gets strengthening and strengthening. But the steel reinforcement makes it weak because it goes on rusting and rusting. That is why we normally say the life of an RCC structure is around 60 to 70 years. Not because the concrete gets weakened, the steel gets weakened. And bamboo, one case is, first thing is bamboo may get attacked with rodents and such things, you know, fungus can attack it. That we have found solution. For bamboo can be used after dipping in borax and copper sulfate solution for around 24 hours. You can prevent it from being attacked by rodents and such things. That is first thing. Second thing is, it's a self-deteriorating material, not like concrete. Bamboo is a dead body when you put inside, because it's a living organism and it's a dead body when you put inside concrete. Any dead body will deteriorate. Only thing is, for human body, it may be 1 or 2 days, whereas for a bamboo, it may be 10 or 20 years. It is definitely, and even if you treat, some fungal remains may be there inside the bamboo, not on the external surfaces, and that may also get multiplied. You know, non-pathogenic organisms are also there inside the wood materials. They can multiply, and that can happen to bamboo also. So bamboo should not be inserted into concrete. Bamboo should be used only in exposed regions where you can identify whether bamboo is getting deteriorated or not. Putting it inside concrete is dangerous because you cannot expose it and see whether it is getting damaged or not. So in the long run, suppose you want the building only for 10 or 20 years, maybe it can stand. Otherwise, it's not advisable. And of course, we can say that it's a very sustained material. The best sustained way is avoid concrete and go for bamboo construction. I know one architect at Trivandrum. He's a well-known architect, Mr. Sajan. He has constructed his 2-storied house with fully bamboo. You can go and see him. He's the joint director of Costford. It's available in Trivandrum, fully bamboo. It's possible. But bamboo mixed with the concrete is dangerous.
I will take the last question from Mr. Nagaraj. Which grade of steel is better in continuous beam, sir?
In any beam, from the flexural point of view, MS mild steel is better. From the economic point of view, TMD is better. TMD, people do claim that there is no rust. It is wrong, because the process of making TMD in most of the local companies are from scrap steel. TMD, if you are buying from Tata Steel or Vaisak Steel, they'll be good quality. So contractors who can afford to pay a bit more, I advise them to buy TMD from Tata Steel or Vaisak Steel. Vaisak Steel is by SAIL, Steel Authority of India, and Tata Steel is by Tata, definitely. These two are made from iron ore, not from scrap steel. Scrap steel will always rust, whatever process you do. TMD process is done, thermomechanical treatment is done basically to avoid rusting. But if already rust is there, nobody can prevent it. Say, for example, you are taking a vaccine for cancer. If already cancerous cells are inside you, that vaccine will not work. That is the point here also. So it is better to go for good quality steel so that rusting can be prevented by it. Of course, if you are buying TMD, if you buy from a good manufacturer, that is better, because cost saving is heavy. The TMD cost will be only around 40% of the mild steel cost.
Okay, sir. I think there are a few more questions, but I think the time is up.
People are
Over to
tired,
you.
no?
Yeah,
Okay.
sir has answered almost all the questions. Thank you so much. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I take this opportunity to thank Mahadevan sir for accepting our invitation, and it was a very indeed a practically good session. I hope all the participants must have at least gained, because there are teachers, faculties, engineers also in this participant group, so they might have gotten real experience about the practical field. So really, it was a good session, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Thank you, sir. And I also thank our principal, Dr. Sangeeta ma'am, our management, Dr. Arun sir and Dr. Kala ma'am, for giving us an opportunity for conducting all these workshops. And I also thank ICI Calicut Center, Engineer Sajid Bhaskar sir, for helping me a lot in coordinating the workshop and coordinating today's session. I thank each and everyone. I thank all the participants for your patience, and we'll have a wonderful week ahead. Tomorrow we'll join with a BIM Lab session from BIM Labs. So hope we'll join there. Hope everyone have really enjoyed the session. And thank you, Mahadevan sir. Thank you once again from the on behalf of the Department of Civil Engineering, Vedavyasa Institute of Technology, and ICI Calicut Center. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, sir. So hope we'll end the session, and thank you all the participants. Tomorrow we'll share the meeting IDs in the group. Tomorrow we'll see you with the other sessions. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.